NSFW, what have you found out about someone that you would never tell them you know? Witnessed a mate secretly try to suck his own DCK. He was successful. Forever unsure to give kudos or not. My roommate punched himself in the eye and faked being jumped. Because his girlfriend was about to break up with him. They are now married. My father admitted that he pressured my mother into an abortion before my brother and I were born. It was a huge wake-up call that kept me from going down a pretty shish TTY road with a guy the first worked with. But I'll never forget the look on his face when he admitted that to me. And I will never tell her that I know. I saw my mom giving my dad a HANDJB/BLW job while I was sleeping in the backseat of the car. Problem is I woke up and this S was going on, so I had to pretend I was still sleeping. I was about 7 or 8 at the time. My cousin was adopted when she was a baby. This is a family secret. As in everyone in the family but her knows. I knew since I was 5. What really sucks is that she already had suspicion, and when she was 16 asked her mother, my aunt, and was told straight up that she was not adopted. The reason why she was suspicious? 1. A great uncle came to my grandfather's funeral, and when he shook hands with my cousin he said to her face, "Oh, is this the girl that aunt's name adopted?" 2. She learned about blood types in biology class and her blood type couldn't have matched with her parents. 3. She's technically of different ethnicity than us. And it's pretty obvious. Another thing that really sucks is that my aunt has a lot of small business investments. But she lamented to my dad that she did not want to give any to my cousin in her will. She wanted all of them to go to her brother, bio son. And she thought sending my cousin to university was already more than enough. Now my cousin is very detached from the whole family. Immediate and extended. And somehow everyone thinks something is wrong with her. I know a guy the first grew up with who was hit all the time by his on-off alcoholic lumberjack dad. One day the dad died from some heart failure or whatnot, and when the cause of death report came out, it claimed he had been conscious after the incident had happened before he had died. My friend had told the police he had not been home but had biked to a friend's house to see if he wanted to go play basketball. I found out later at a party where we were drunk. When I asked him how it had been to come home to dead dad, that he had been home all the time and had heard his dad scream, gasp in pain and fall over, but that he had just stood there. First empty then smiling as his dad withered in pain and slowly expired into unconsciousness and died. Then when my friend was certain his dad was not waking up again, he called 911. Don't hit your kids and expect them to come through for you. Holy S. I found out my grandpa used to sew big pockets into the inside of his jacket so he could more effectively shoplift. Great man. I found out my dad won the lottery. He won around $250. And has never told me or my brothers. It took some digging to find, so I never told anyone because I figure if he hasn't told his family then he doesn't want anyone to know. Good move on his part. People will come out of the woodwork for that. Even if it isn't a lot of money. And anything you give them as a gift when you win is never enough. Best friend, mid-30s, visits his parents and relatives late on Christmas Eve 2014 and quietly comes in late through the rear of the house carrying gifts. His extended family are in the living room discussing how it's surreal he doesn't know his aunt and uncle are his real parents and his parents are his aunt and uncle. Turns out at 17 they had him while dating in HS and gave him up to the older childless married aunt/uncle who had been trying to conceive for many years. The stress of trying to have a child gone. The adoptive parents then had 3 kids in 4 years, his cousins. His real parents married a few years after his adoption and went on to have 3 children, his biological siblings. To this day everyone thinks he doesn't know and he has never let on to them he does. He has no hard feelings, but it was a shocker. The person knows I know, but I would never tell my family. When my cousin was 5 or 6 he was not part of our family yet. My uncle met his mom and they fell in love and moved in with each other. My cousin was still with his dad and my uncle and aunt were trying to get custody, but her ex was a very wealthy man. Apparently he was also sexually abusing my cousin, but it was hard to prove and her ex had some really good lawyers. My uncle was not a rich man, but they needed money for a lawyer and a special therapist for my cousin so they could win the case. He robbed his workplace for the cash to pay all the fees needed to get my cousin away from his dad. My uncle's work found out and had him arrested. He had to go to jail for 2 years. He told my family and everyone that he got a job abroad and had to leave for a few years so that he could pay for my cousin's lawyers. Everyone in my family still thinks that he went abroad to make extra cash. Only me and his wife know that he was in jail. My cousin is a very successful, well-adjusted, happy man now. He doesn't really remember anything about living with his dad. My uncle says he would do it again 1,000 times if it meant my cousin growing up safe. I used to work overnight security a couple of years ago. My partner, we will call him Bill, was struggling with some stuff left over from the Iraq War. And so we spent a lot of time getting to know each other better. Eventually, I promoted up to supervisor, and then assistant director of security. One night, the guy who had replaced me on overnights called to complain about Bill coming in 3 hours late and drunk off his ass. I knew the guy was not good at keeping his lips sealed. And if I didn't say something to my boss right away, then he would. So, I called my boss, who usually shows up right after overnight leaves, and told him what was going on. My boss was also an Iraq veteran and he knew about the struggles Bill was having and how close the two of us had become. So I felt it would be better coming from my lips. My boss came in early, caught Bill red-handed, and suspended him for a week. I'm instructed that when he gets back, to schedule him for day shifts so he can be supervised. We kept the whole thing hush-hush and assumed he would improve once he was on day shifts. So I do exactly that. Bill was elated to be working with me again and with our other buddies during the day. We were like one big family kinda. Really miss that place sometimes. He got better at his job, started sleeping regularly, and stopped drinking. Bill told me he was back on days because he wanted to be. He was tired of overnights. He never told me about the drinking. And I never told him I knew. We both kept that secret until he took his own life 2 months ago. Rest in peace, Bill. You are missed. When I first got married, my sister-in-law was living with us. One day, while she was at work, she called and asked that I email something to her from her desktop. This was prior to texting and email on phones being so prevalent. So, I used her laptop and her Outlook to send the attachment. I checked the sent items to make sure it went through with the attachment and found an email she had sent to someone of a bunch of pictures of her with lit candles shoved up her A. I never said anything but had to start hiding all of our stick candles in fear that she'd tip all my Yankees. One day while looking through Flickr, I came across some Enda pictures of my coworker. She has lots of photo albums on her account. Turns out she and her husband are swingers. I work with her on a daily basis. I would never tell her I have seen them. Every single one of them. Twice a day. I recently discovered that my coworker's girlfriend jacked him off with a burrito and then forced him to eat it. But that's his business, and our coworkers can be brutal, especially towards him, as he does come off a bit strange. So there's no need to make things worse for him. I'll never tell my family I know I was a twin. One of my grandmothers got drunk at Christmas and started to talk about it one year when I was a kid. Part of me wants to say she was wrong, but the look of horror in some families' faces before they had me leave to play with cousins always made it stick out. It would explain the lack of baby pictures and why I was baptized really early. Like few days old. I don't know what happened to my twin. A close friend that I roomed with at college once had me log into their email to print out tickets. Found the tickets but also a decent amount of evidence that he had a strong SCTF tish. Not sure that there is ever a way to bring that up in conversion. One of my good friends is HIV positive. I found out through the grapevine, and immediately understood that I shouldn't know that about him. I've never said anything about it to him, but I've made a distinct effort to be more available to him as a friend. I figure if he ever wants to tell me, he will. If not, he could still use some kindness in his life. A bummy kid we had to gently eject from a gallery opening spent his exit begging for a few bucks. Offering to suck anyone's D for $10. It was an odd moment anyway. Capped by an odd, sad offer. Later, I went out on the fire escape for a smoke. In the alley below was a straight acquaintance, like square straight. Married with kids and a boring career, leaning against the wall. Bum guy's head bobbing against his crotch. Getting a $10 beach from a sketchy tweaker. My first instinct was to make some noise. My second was, I just don't want to be involved in this. Of course, upon re-entering the party, acquaintance's wife was the first goddamned person who spoke to me. Hey, have you seen Bob? Is he out sneaking a smoke? It was a weird moment. I've said nothing for a decade. When my brother came to visit for the holidays, he left his iPad on the counter and had read it up. I saw his username and that he had a ton of post karma. Went back to my computer and looked him up. Cuck PRN. Most of him and his ex-wife. Some with his new fiancé. It was pretty traumatizing. Pretty sure my old roommate saw my username once and either forgot it or looks at it all the time. I don't really post anything too risque that I wouldn't tell him anyway. Classic case of finding out what kind of PRN someone is into watching. On New Year's Eve, my mom's friend asked me to connect her phone to the Bluetooth in her car. It takes about 5 seconds and one button to do. So I agreed to help. She unlocked her phone, gives me the keys, and I got into the car. Phone is connected and I want to test out the speakers and crank the volume up. I opened Google Chrome to play some music and I'm greeted by a PRN hub video called an LFCK. I noticed she had 45 tabs open. Curious if she had an impressive 45 PRNO videos open. I looked at the other tabs. One was a video where a girl was vacuum sealing plastic wrap on her vagina. I had quite enough of that and put some music on. Speakers were good. Got pretty loud with decent bass. I know of a single mom. Struggling to pay bills. Her ex-husband quit his job so he doesn't pay child support. She drives over to the next state to strip for money. I know she's ashamed and I'd never tell her or anyone else. She's trying to finish school while working another job too. A manager in my office handed me her phone to look at a picture and got distracted talking to someone else. A text came in from a woman who talked quite graphically about what she had done to this manager the night before. I handed the phone back and pretended not to have seen the text. I didn't have a clue she was GY. My friend doesn't really have a 1080p monitor even though he thinks it is. I saw my grandparents on a swinging site. My wife had never met them at that point. Yeah. It doesn't exactly come up during Christmas. But why were you on the site? We are swingers. I once had a female friend ask me to help her recover her hard drive after her OS crashed. While I was copying things over to the new drive, I found a 25-minute video of her F-king her ex-boyfriend. I couldn't decide if I should not copy it to the new drive so she'd forget it was on there. Or copy it so she wouldn't notice it was missing and realized I'd seen it.